Hello, everybody. Welcome to Lupus Fitness 333. My name is Angel. Today's video is philosophical talks number, I believe. Don't worry about the number. But today we're going to talk about the dark side of the shadow. Okay? So, number one, we have to balance this out and integrate it into ourselves. You can't. A lot of people forget or they believe that it's about removing the shadow from the self. That's not it, because again, it's you, and you want to integrate it. All right. Now, one of two indicators are within your personality that help you reveal what your shadow is, or the dark side of the shadow. Okay. Number one, usually it's a feeling that comes with a thought, but most of the time it's a feeling. All right, either you're running from the feeling or you're hiding from it. Running meaning like you go and do something else to kind of not dwell in that feeling. Kind of like, how do I explain it? Let's say you feel like you're around fire, okay? And you are walking closer to the fire. Every time you feel the heat, let's say the heat represents the feeling. The stronger and stronger that feeling, that heat is, the more and more cautious you are and the more willing you are to run. You understand? That's what running away from the feeling is. Now, hiding from the feeling is completely different. Hiding from the feeling is that you know it's there and you do everything in your power to avoid it, okay? Whereas running is that maybe you're not aware of where it is and you may accidentally stumble across it, but you still choose to run away from it instead of confronting it. And hiding means that you just don't confront it at all and you do everything in your power to know where you're hyper vigilant of where it is and what could happen. But that's far more difficult. Hiding from it is far more difficult than running from it. Running from it is still you're left to chance that you're going to come across it. Whereas hiding from it is that, again, it's a hypervigilance. It's a, how do I say, it's a trauma response, okay? And they're all linked to a feeling. Now, the feeling depends on the person, okay? Like for me, for instance, I feel it here, like around here. Like it comes from my trap down to my chest. Sometimes it comes into a V shape like this. Other times it comes into the gut. Sometimes I can feel it here. I know that for whenever I speak to women about it, they have a completely different experience. Usually they say they feel it throughout their whole body. Like they have a whole sensation through their whole body, which again is a difference between men and women. Women have a higher sensitivity to feelings than men do. All right. Now, the dark side of the shadow also comes with usually around three indicators of behaviors. Okay. The first one being sabotage. Sometimes, let's say you're doing good, and somewhere inside you, you feel as though you have either imposter syndrome or you feel not worthy or this is too good to be true. So sometimes you will sabotage the process to kind of justify the feeling or to have control over it being too good. You understand? Sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean that it's actually too good. Sometimes it's just something that's normal, and because you're not used to normal, you decide to just destroy it because that's what you're used to. You're used to things not working out. But in reality, it's more of a thing within you that causes that. Okay? Number two, which from what I've learned and what I've researched, is usually men do it, which is self-destruction. Self-destruction is usually, from my experience, I also went through self-destruction. Self-destruction can be drugs, can be self-harm, can be what's called rumination, rumination on negative thoughts, um, and lastly, putting yourself in some kind of situation where you might get harmed. Okay, it doesn't necessarily mean that you harm yourself, but let's say you put yourself in a position where you know it could be potentially dangerous, but something in you drives you to do that because, again, the your shadow is controlling that. And I know that sounds weird, but that's what happens when mis when you're not aligned with your shadow. All right, that's what causes these dark traits or these impulsive behaviors that are detrimental to yourself. And these are examples, of course. They're not the only ones, but this is a general idea of it. So it's sabotage, self-destruction, and lastly, it's violence towards others. Some people who have the dark side of the shadow don't necessarily tend to harm themselves in any way. Their ego or their their little bit of self-respect towards themselves or their lifestyle has protected them from wanting to hurt themselves, so they end up hurting others. Now, this can be through violence, this could be verbally, this could be emotionally, but again, it's a misalignment or it's a part of them that have not resolved and not integrated into their regular day personality, which is why shadow work is so important. But again, now we're getting to the practical part. Okay? How do you get out of the shadow's dark side and integrate it into your personality? Okay. So number one is acknowledging it. Acknowledgement is a difficult process because usually it's reactionary, and reactions usually are almost instantaneous and don't allow you to think because again it's reactionary. You're reacting to whatever triggered that. And again, the only thing that you really have power over is how you react to things. It's how you decide to choose your feelings. When it comes to this, although it's contradictory, when it comes to this, it's a reactionary feeling. Again, you're protecting this thing that's, think of it like a raw injury. Just a slight touch of it, and you're already trying to protect it. You're trying to shield it, and you don't want it to get hurt any more than what it already is because it hasn't been healed. I understand that the wound is still festering. It's very sensitive to the touch. Um, and acknowledging that requires you to have, how do I call it? You have to be able to think retrospectively, meaning like sometimes you won't, no, in most cases, you won't be able to think of it at the moment when you're reacting like that, okay? Um, and that's the difficult part. So the easier part is, let's say you already made a mistake. You already had reacted in this negative way. So you go away or you go somewhere else. The time has passed, and so you reflect. You reflect on what just happened, and you have to break that down. What happened that caused that, and how did you react? And that little moment right there, that little action or reaction is the acknowledgement. Now you have to give that a name. Naming it gives it some form of identity, and that identity gives you some form of control or power over it. You understand? So usually it's a thought or it's a feeling. In most cases, it's a feeling, all right? And it's a feeling that is not pleasant, all right? And you have to somehow catch that when it's happening. Or in this case, you're acknowledging it. So when you're going to be put in a situation, whether you know it or not, understand that that's the reaction that you'll get. And so therefore, because you've already identified it and you named it, you know that this whatever interaction that you're in, you understand that that's your trigger. That's the side that you have to confront and somehow change it. Okay? Not change it as in like remove it, but understand where that comes from and have better control over it. You understand? You could still feel those feelings, but you still have to control your actions towards it. You understand? So it comes back to the other videos where I said where the coward and the hero feel the same thing. The difference is their actions. In this case, you don't want to fall victim to the feeling because that's you falling victim to the dark side of the shadow. You want to acknowledge the shadow is trying to come out because it's trying to protect something of yours that you're not ready to confront, or you're just not acknowledging because it may destroy a certain perspective of yourself that you're not willing to let go. Okay? That's the thing. So in this case, you have to embrace that that's how you are. You understand? And embracing it, you not only forgiving yourself, but you also understand that that's a human trait. You are gonna react like that, but that doesn't mean that that's an appropriate response all the time. So you have to kind of slowly work to curb that, or think of it like a blade. You're gonna have to forge it into something else. You understand? Into a more manageable material. All right, and we've talked about it in the other videos. It's the alchemical process of changing your emotional lead into empowering gold. You want to change that lead, which is a reactionary response from the dark side of your shadow, into something more productive, something more I don't want to say positive because that sounds cheesy, but something more productive for yourself and the other person. You understand? But mainly it's for yourself, because you may not always have that with that person, or the other people may not be on the same page. All right? Changing it requires an expansion of your consciousness. So this is a bigger process. So the thought is what starts it, the action is what causes a good or bad result, and then that behavior is what's acknowledged from people, and that becomes your character. You understand? And you don't want to associate your character with someone that can't control their emotional impulses. Okay? Especially one where with dealing with the dark side of the shadow can be volatile. It can be a very volatile reaction. Okay, it's kind of like when you throw sodium, potassium, pure potassium in water. It's just explosively reactionary. You don't want to be that. Okay, you want to be able to understand that you know that you do that, but you are putting precautions to kind of hone that skill into something else. All right, you're gonna hold that energy and put it into something productive that ultimately helps you, and if you want, it could help other people. All right. Lastly, having people that are honest with you. You have to have that. This is for people who may have a hard time doing internal work. Okay, extroverts usually have this problem where maybe they're afraid to be alone, because then that means they might be alone with their thoughts. And some extroverts kind of don't feel comfortable with that. All right. And so one way of dealing with it, and it's also good for introverts, is to surround yourself with people who are honest. Now, how do I say this? Nowadays, people are kind of sensitive to honesty, okay? And these type of people that are honest might be considered brutal or rude. Um, you can't look at it that way, man. If someone is telling you something that you know deep down inside is correct, you can't be upset at them. You understand? You can't be upset, because if you look at it from an objective standpoint, you're basically getting mad at the truth, at what could possibly help you change for the better by accepting the reality of the situation. You getting upset at it means you're rejecting reality. Rejecting reality means you're going to continue living in an illusion that you may or may not have built for yourself. And thus, you're going to constantly come across problems where that reality of yours, which is an illusion, is going to be constantly tested. And if you're constantly having a reaction, again, the dark side of the shadow, constantly having a reaction where you're going to be combative because they're questioning your reality or telling you, hey, that's not what it is, then this video is for you. Okay? Remember, the dark side, the shadow is your other sets of powers. Okay? The side that we use in public, or the good side, or whatever the thing that we believe is the acceptable social norm, is one set of powers. The shadow on the other, the shadow side is your other set of powers. You need to have both to be fully integrated into a human. You understand? You need the shadow to be able to do the things that are more important to yourself, or that help people be able to respect you and depend on you and know that they're confident in your abilities to do things. You understand? Because the shadow is the one that basically says, hey, I'm going to do this regardless of the situation. I'm going to do this because it's difficult and I don't care, and I'm willing to go into the darkness and come out with the light. You understand? This is very important. Okay? A lot of people nowadays don't know how to go about it in a practical sense. It's very difficult because it's taking an abstract concept and putting it into practical application, which means you have to watch your thoughts, watch your words, watch your habits, watch your behaviors. You understand? Put behaviors in front of habits, because your behavior will end up becoming your habits. Your habits will end up becoming your character. Your character will end up becoming your destiny. And I know I've said it before, but it all starts with the thoughts. The thoughts that you have in every conversation, especially when you're home by yourself or wherever you are alone. Whatever thoughts you have most of the time, that's what will lead you into making certain actions, okay? So keep that in mind. The shadow work comes from the thought. Your thoughts are what dictate who you will be. And who you will be will dictate your destiny. Okay? Okay, everybody. Thank you for watching. This is Lupus Fitness 333 Philosophical Talks. Dark Side of the Shadow. Please like and subscribe. And give this video 30 likes, please. Thank you. Bye.